Welcome, everyone, to today's Explainer. We're going to shatter a really common, honestly pretty dangerous myth floating around the tech world today. The idea that FinTech is basically just SaaS with money. I mean, it's absolutely not. If you try to treat building a digital bank or a payment rail the exact same way you treat building a social media app, well, you're heading straight for a brick wall. Today, we're looking at the intense friction between rapid product growth and strict regulatory governance. We're going to explore exactly how the best teams out there navigate these global guardrails and how they do it without sacrificing the user experience. Okay, let's dive into this. If you're building a traditional tech product, your North Star is always engagement, right? You want those daily active users, long session lengths, crazy viral loops. But in FinTech, that mindset forces a total paradigm shift. You are actually optimizing for survivability. The ultimate goal isn't just user delight anymore, it's failure containment. You're operating in this environment where a single misplaced line of code doesn't just mean your app gets a little glitchy, it means you might literally accidentally trigger a false overdraft cascade for thousands of people. So moving fast and breaking things, yeah, that's a terrible idea when what you're breaking is the law and people's actual livelihoods.
Section 1. The real cost of compliance.
To truly understand this whole shift to survivability, we have to look at the hard financial realities of operating inside a regulated financial system. Because it's not just about rules, It's about the bottom line. According to data from the Financial Action Task Force, the FTF, the true hidden cost of KYC, or Know Your Customer, and AML, anti-money laundering compliance, actually sits somewhere between $5 and $25 per customer. And that drastically skews your traditional customer acquisition cost, or CAC. Let's say you think your CAC is $40 based on your marketing spend, but you ignore the fact that maybe 30 to 60% of those users might actually fail the onboarding funnel because of identity checks. Suddenly, your actual cost for a funded active user is pushing $80, maybe even $120. Compliance isn't just some post-launch checklist, it is a massive line item right there on your P&L. And to put that into perspective, this compliance burden gets massively amplified depending on your actual technology stack. Think about incumbent banks. They're often running on legacy COBOL and mainframe systems designed like 40 years ago, right? They're spending an estimated £150 per customer just to keep those ancient systems on life support. We're talking about incredibly bloated budgets where the vast majority of the cash goes into just keeping the lights on. Now, compare that to modern neobanks. Because they're using API and cloud-native infrastructure, their cost per customer drops to around £20. That is a fundamental difference in agility. But here's the catch. Regardless of whether you're a legacy bank or a super nimble FinTech, the rules of the road remain exactly the same. Section 2. Navigating regulatory no-zones. Which brings us to the very real, very severe consequences of ignoring those rules. Let's explore what happens when you wander into what we call the regulatory no-zones. Now, this anecdote perfectly captures the tension. It's a real story from a fast-scaling neobank. So a product manager built this beautifully frictionless one-click savings feature. And on paper, it was a massive success. It increased user opt-ins by 37%. But it was rolled back just 2 weeks later because the internal audit team flagged it. Why did that happen? Well, the PM hadn't consulted the compliance team before launch, and it turned out that frictionless one-click design potentially violated consumer protection laws. You see, in this industry, you don't fully own your roadmap. You steward it through these layers of incredibly tight control. Your brilliant feature honestly means nothing if it gets vetoed by audit, and that is exactly why ignoring these guardrails can totally ruin your product roadmap.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the specific standard that often triggers these rollbacks. It's called UDAP, that stands for Unfair, Deceptive, or Abusive Acts or Practices. It's a regulatory standard that demands absolute transparency. So if a feature is quote-unquote too frictionless, well, it might actually mean the user didn't fully understand what they were signing up for in the first place. Ignoring standards like UDAP puts product managers straight into that regulatory no zone. You might get a really high conversion rate today, sure, but you'll absolutely get a cease and desist tomorrow.
Section 3. The Global Guardrails. So who exactly is enforcing these no zones? Well, here is your alphabet soup of global regulators. These are the bodies dictating these strict operational realities across the entire financial sector. Over in the UK, you have the FCA, heavily focused on conduct and markets. In the US, the OCC, CFPB, and FDIC are meticulously watching over consumer protection and systemic stability. The EU operates under the ECB and EBA, and they're mandating frameworks like GDPR for absolute data privacy, and PSD2, the Payment Services Directive, which literally forces open banking APIs.
Then, looking at the Asia-Pacific region, authorities like the MAS in Singapore and the RBI in India are balancing this massive push for digital adoption with intense oversight. These bodies aren't just making polite suggestions. They are setting the absolute legal boundaries of what your software is allowed to do.
Section 4. New metrics that matter. Because we're operating under these intense global guardrails, the way we actually measure success has to completely change. So the crucial point is this. Vanity metrics like daily active users, they won't save you in an audit. What gets you promoted in FinTech are these metrics right here. First, audit trail completeness. That ensures every single transaction can be traced. Then, general ledger, or GL impact, which means you understand exactly how your new feature moves real money on the balance sheet. Then there's the AML alert to conversion rate. Mature programs typically aim for a 5 to 20% benchmark here. If it's lower than that, your system is generating too many false positives and wasting millions of dollars in human analyst time. But if it's higher, your thresholds might actually be dangerously loose. And these operational KPIs are dramatically shifting as we speak. Back in 2022, a 24 to 48-hour batch reconciliation cycle was totally standard. But looking ahead toward 2026, with the adoption of real-time messaging standards like ISO 2022 and FedNow, regulators are expecting that time to compress to under an hour. That's a massive jump. If your product still relies on old, slow batch ledgers, you are entirely failing the modern customer experience bar.
Section 5. Building Design-Led Compliance.
So how do we actually build for this? How do we manage to move fast without, breaking the law? Let's move to and see how this builds a truly sustainable product culture. Step 1. You absolutely must map the general ledger impact early in the ideation phase, not after the code is written, but right at the start. Step 2. Integrate step-up QIC smoothly into the user interface. Don't ask for a passport on screen 1. Instead, ask for it dynamically when the user actually tries to initiate a high-risk transfer. That brilliantly balances growth with safety. And finally, step 3, embed compliance reviews directly into your software development lifecycle, or SDLC. Compliance teams need to be co-creators with you, not just some final roadblock right before deployment. Which perfectly leads us to this powerful mantra: compliance as a feature, not a fix. In the modern financial ecosystem, the most valuable people on the team are basically the translators. If you can sit right between the legal department's demand for zero regulatory exposure and the engineering team's need for agile speed, and somehow find a way to design an experience that satisfies both of them, that is the ultimate superpower in FinTech. You're literally building trust directly into the product architecture.
I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought. If your product is built for blistering speed, if it has the most beautiful user interface and incredible viral growth, but it fails the audit and gets shut down by the regulators, did you really build a product at all? Or did you just build a really expensive liability? In financial technology, survivability is the absolute foundation of innovation. So rethink your roadmaps, embrace the global guardrails, and design for compliance from day one. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time.